So what if I told you that a single idea completely redrew the map of Europe? An idea that toppled ancient empires and really shaped the very world we live in today? Well, that idea is nationalism. And its story, as we're about to see, is one of beautiful dreams and some pretty devastating nightmares. Let's dive in. Our story starts not with a battle, but with a dream. Take a look at this. It's a print by a French artist, Frederick Soru, and in it, he imagined this incredible future, a world of democratic and social republics all living in perfect harmony. You can just see this procession of nations all marching peacefully together. It's such a beautiful, optimistic vision. But the journey from this dream to the reality, well, it was anything but straightforward. So what exactly made this dream so powerful, so revolutionary? To get that, we really need to unpack the symbols that are just crammed into this one image. I mean, this image is pure political dynamite for its time. Just look at the details. You've got Liberty herself holding the torch of enlightenment, and down at her feet, the shattered crowns and ruins of the old monarchies. Totally useless. But the most radical idea of all is the people themselves. See, they aren't subjects bound to a king. They are citizens of a nation, and each one is identified by its own distinct flag. This was basically a declaration of a whole new world order. And at the center of this whole vision was a brand new concept, the nation-state. You have to remember, for centuries, your loyalty wasn't to a people or a culture, but to a person, a king, an emperor, a dynasty. The idea that the people, bound together by a shared history and identity, could be the ultimate source of power, wow. That wasn't just new, it was absolutely world-changing. And this slide just lays out the difference so clearly. On one side, you've got the old world, these huge, sprawling, dynastic empires, where one monarch ruled over all kinds of different people who often had nothing in common. And on the other side, you have this new idea, the nation-state, where the citizens are connected by a common identity, and their loyalty is to the nation itself, not just one guy on a throne. Okay, so an idea is one thing, but putting it into practice? That's something else entirely. Let's get to the moment this new idea of the nation literally exploded onto the world stage. 1789, the French Revolution. This right here was the first clear, massive expression of nationalism in action. It was the moment that power truly shifted from an absolute king to the collective body of French citizens. But here's the thing. A nation isn't just born overnight. The French revolutionaries knew they had to actually build a new French identity from the ground up. This wasn't an accident, it was a project. They introduced new concepts for people to rally around, like la patrie, the fatherland. They ditched the king's flag for the tricolor, they created the same laws for everybody, and they even pushed one common language, Parisian French, across the country. They were literally building a nation, piece by piece. And they definitely did not want to keep this amazing idea to themselves. No, the revolutionaries believed it was their destiny to export this model. Their mission was to help other peoples all across Europe overthrow their own kings and form their own nations. And as you can probably guess, that French spark caught fire pretty quickly everywhere else. Let's take a look at how this idea spread, kicking off a whole century of turmoil. Really, the 19th century was just this constant, massive tug of war. After Napoleon was finally defeated in 1815, the old empires tried to put the genie back in the bottle, to restore the old monarchies. But it was just too late. Nationalist movements started popping up everywhere. In Greece in 1821, then another revolution in France in 1830, and then boom, the huge wave of revolutions in 1848, with people all across Europe demanding their own nation-states. You know, the Austrian Chancellor Metternich, a guy whose whole world was built on the old system of emperors, he just perfectly captured the panic with this famous quote. To him, these ideas coming out of France weren't about liberation. He saw them as a virus, a disease that threatened to burn down the entire aristocratic order of Europe. But here's the thing. Nationalism wasn't just built with politics and revolutions. It was also forged in people's hearts and minds through something a lot more personal, culture. And that's where a movement called Romanticism comes in. You could say it basically gave nationalism its soul. Romantics weren't into cold, hard logic. They celebrated emotion, intuition, and a kind of shared mystical past. They believed the true spirit of a nation wasn't in its government, but in its folk songs, its stories, and its poetry. So, artists and intellectuals got to work. They started using culture as a toolkit for nation building. They'd collect old folk tales, turn folk dances like the Polish Polonaise into symbols of national struggle, and write these grand operas celebrating moments from their shared history. Even language itself became a weapon. Just speaking your native tongue could be an act of defiance against a foreign ruler. But then, 1848 happens, and after that big wave of revolutions mostly fizzled out, a kind of deep disillusionment set in. The idealistic democratic spirit of nationalism, well, it started to change into something harder and a lot more cynical. See, the old conservative order, the kings and the aristocrats, they started playing a really clever game. It was like, if you can't beat them, join them. They grabbed onto the powerful emotions of nationalism and twisted them for their own purposes. Suddenly, being a patriot wasn't about liberty for the people anymore, it was about loyalty to the state and its army. This new philosophy got a famous name: blood and iron. The belief that nations are built not with votes and speeches, but with war and industry. And yeah, this is where that beautiful dream of a peaceful family of nations really starts to go sour. Nationalism began to pivot from a force of unity to a force of conflict and division. By the end of the 1800s, for a lot of people, nationalism wasn't about liberation anymore. It had become intolerant, aggressive. It was all us versus them. Nationalist groups grew incredibly hostile to one another, and they were more than ready to go to war to prove that their nation was superior. And nowhere was this more dangerous than in the Balkans. I mean, this region was this incredibly complex mix of different ethnic groups, most of them living under the thumb of the crumbling Ottoman Empire. As all these different Slavic groups began fighting for their own independence, the whole area became a powder keg. Each group was fiercely jealous of the others, and all the big European powers were meddling, trying to gain influence. This new aggressive nationalism needed an outlet, and it found the perfect one in imperialism. The major European powers started to see building a global empire as the ultimate national sport. They used patriotic fervor to justify conquering huge parts of the world, like you see here on this map of the British Empire. And notice the incredible irony: they often used the revolutionary language of freedom and fraternity to justify dominating other peoples. And this toxic combination, this aggressive, intolerant nationalism, mixed with a fierce competition for empire, it proved to be absolutely catastrophic. It was leading Europe straight off a cliff, right into the disaster of the First World War in 1914. Which brings us full circle, right back to that hopeful image of nations marching in peace. And we're left with this huge, troubling question. How did a beautiful dream of fraternity and freedom become the absolute nightmare of World War I? It's a paradox that shows us how even the most powerful ideas can have a very, very dark side, a story that continues to shape our world even today. Thanks for joining this explainer.